my favorite part was him after he caught the ball, man. It was like those defensive backs were like, okay, you go ahead.
Yeah.
They weren't going to touch that
Little
guy.
Ole. Okay, you want to move on to the NFL or keep going on the college?
No, let's go NFL.
All right, we're supposed to be the game of all time. Breeze, Brady. But who are these Bucks, man? What happened there? They went 3-0 in their first 5 series.
It's got to be the saddest performance ever by Brady. It reminded me of that Super Bowl of with Peyton, where the ball was snapped over his head on the first play of the game. It was like as soon as that game started, you knew, you could just feel it, that the Saints, especially, Breeze is tired of hearing it. You can tell. Breeze was locked in, and that offensive line, man, they gave him days. There were plays, and he did it. And plus, he had Michael Thomas back. Forgive it, but that was an old-fashioned ass whooping right there. Whoa. That was one that they'll remember for a long time.
It's old-fashioned ass whooping.
Yeah. The weird thing is, if you look at the Bucks, the weirdest thing about them is in primetime games, night games, and not to say that obviously they won the Monday night game against New York. They seem to struggle at night, which seems very bizarre because they lost to Chicago on a Thursday night game, and I'm blanking up that had another night game, but it's just really weird that a team that, like, you go back to the Green Bay game, they look like a juggernaut,
right?
And and again, it's not fair to compare apples and oranges because obviously they play in the same division, but the Bears team, which, as you saw from this Sunday, their offense is one of the most horrific things. They were able somehow to generate 23 points against the Saints defense. And the Bucks, whose offense is obviously clearly eons ahead of where Chicago is, was only able to generate 3. It's
a weird year, man.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
All right, how about that? Yeah, go ahead, Chicago.
I was just going to say Chicago has to get themselves a quarterback. I mean, it's beyond sad. Whatever they have to do, they got to get themselves an experienced quarterback, either Stafford or get what's his name, Sam Darnold, somebody.
And a running back would help too.
Yeah. The
guy doesn't run into the back of his own players' jerseys. I mean, that's not what you want to do usually.
Well, again, I've never been a fan of Montgomery as a player. He seems like a great person, but he has
a nice character.
I will say this: their quarterback is an issue. Their play calling is an issue.
Oh yes.
But if we're gonna list it in order, like from number one to number, it starts with the general manager in terms of they allowed he's been there long enough. You look at what their offensive line is, and albeit they've had injuries, but they developed no backups. I mean, and then they have just I mean, that's the thing. The Titans are one of the worst. I mean, they said during the telecast, the Titans only had 7 sacks through essentially like 8 weeks. They're averaging a little less than 1 sack a game. And they look like they were just like wrecking at school. And it's just because their offensive line. And like I said, I didn't think Nick Foles was a great signing. We already kind of talked about that. But to at least be fair to him, to be fair to Matt Nagy, who I'm not a big fan of, to be fair to David Montgomery, who I'm not a big fan of, it really starts with the offensive line. Like, if you can't like pass block or run block, you're not going to have a lot of success consistently.
I think there'll be some house cleaning at the old Soldier Field after this season. All right. Yeah. Good to see Dick Stockton calling that game, too. He's about 107 years old.
Love that voice, though. Hey, Tua
Kyler?
No. Well, we can do that one. I was going to say our 2 local guys, Teddy and Lamar.
Yes.
Come on. Teddy was that close. A 67-yard field goal that had enough distance. If he could have pulled it to the left just a frazzle,
right,
they could have done it.
The Panthers are an average team playing over their heads, and it's really fun to see.
McCaffrey did what he had to do, but Teddy had a running touchdown.
Yes.
It was cool.
Good signing. Good team. Like him a lot moving forward.
Yeah.
I think we've said it a few times before. As good as Sean Payton is, he's got to start looking at that rearview mirror because Matt Rule already just through half a season, he looks like the real deal, and they're only going to get better.
Yeah,
so.
I like that a lot.
Yeah,
and it came down to if that guy would have, and that guy's got the leg, they just missed it. It just went wide. But if that 67-yarder would have popped, that would have been a game of games.
And that would have been on the 50th anniversary of the Tom Dempsey 63-yarder.
Seriously,
it would have been perfect.
Oh yeah, wow. I didn't know that.
And the crazy thing is, actually, that's 2 games where it's happened because against a few weeks back against the Saints.
Yep.
In regulation, unfortunately, Teddy Bridgewater took a sack.
Yep.
Right before, because if you watch that kick, it literally was like a 65+ yard field goal. It just missed going over the crossbar.
Missed it by that much.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Styles, Sly has a big leg. So.
Okay, and the battle of the short quarterbacks, Tua and Kyler, another instant classic kind of. Fun to see those guys playing so well.
Yep.
Good game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to say, I was sort of poo-pooing Tua. He did better than I thought he was going to do. And he had some moments where he had to move, and he took a couple of licks and got right back up. So, but I think Kyler Murray is one, if not the most exciting quarterback. I guess Mahomes, you'd have to give it to him, maybe Lamar, but Kyler is one exciting player to watch. He really is.
Agree.
So.
I don't know if you're wrong. I think you might be right. He might be the most exciting. Just because, again, now they're 5-3, the Dolphins, but they've been playing very good defense. It's mainly they have great corners, and you look at it. Kyler Murray, he's been living off of DeAndre Hopkins, through his passing game. Dolphins did a good job of wiping him out. He only had 30 yards receiving. Didn't matter. Kyler Murray went to Christian Kirk. He found Larry Fitzgerald for some. He found his tight ends. I think Max Williams and Darnold and whatnot. And then his rushing ability. He had 106 yards rushing and a rushing TD. And it's just you can't. I think it's impossible for a defense to stop Kyler Murray. I just think, and again, as great a runner as Lamar is. I think after watching enough games of Kyler Murray, I think Kyler Murray is a better runner than Lamar. I do.
I think you're right. But listen to what you just said, man. The Dolphins, they're 5-3. Did we see that coming? I don't think so.
And they're going to win that division probably.
It's getting close, isn't it?
Buffalo can't get healed up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're halfway home on the season, and look at the records. There's some interesting surprises.
And to be fair to what J-Boy's saying, you remember Miami, they were so woeful at the beginning of last year. They played better in the second half. So if that follows from last year to this year, the Dolphins might win the division over Buffalo. So, and again, people made too big a deal about Tua only throwing for, less than 100 yards against the Rams. One, he didn't have to do anything. They had, I believe, 2 defensive touchdowns. And also, Aaron Donald is in the peak of his game, and Miami still doesn't have a great offensive line. So, you're not going to ask Tua to do too much and maybe, lose the game because Aaron Donald's just wrecking stuff. Where, again, Cards don't have a good pass rush, so I'm not going to go, over the top for Tua. But Tua played very well. I mean, he was very accurate. And obviously the ball had a lot of zip on it, which goes back to college. I mean, when you watch him, and it's not fair to compare him to Kyler because Kyler and Lamar are probably the best, pure athletes at the quarterback position. But
yeah, probably in the league.
Tua has some – running, scrambling ability. He rushed for 35 yards. So, he gives them a lot. And I think twofold why they switched to Tua over Fitzgerald. They know what Fitzgerald is at this point. They want to evaluate Tua in case he isn't that guy. Maybe they have draft capital. They draft a quarterback next year. But also, if he is their quarterback, they just want to give him experience. And also, they feel he won't turn the ball over to the extent that Fitzgerald has shown for his career he does do.
So what else did you like from week 9 of the National Football League?
Overall, I think it was interesting. Some strange losses. That just are inexplicable. But I wanted to point out Lamar. He surpassed Dan Marino, because he's won more games in his first 30 starts than Marino did, and Marino held the record. And also, when we were talking about Kyler Murray, he also is the first young quarterback to have a rushing touchdown and 3 passing touchdowns in a game. And so we got to see some tremendous quarterback play. And Lamar, for the first time, came from behind. Of course, I got to give it to the Colts. They're fighting an uphill battle with Phil at quarterback. I mean,
did you see when Phil fell down and he got hurdled by that guy and he kind of looked like a turtle on his back?
Oh yeah,
it was that's a comic moment. I can't let that go past.
Oh, I know. And who blocked him? Nobody blocked him. It was that turf monster that tripped him again. He just didn't want to take that guy on. That's all that was. Just lay down, Phil.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, I have a question for you guys. When guys like Moose Johnston and Dick Stockton have nothing else to talk about, they say that because of no preseason, this is why the Bucs were the Bucs this weekend and why other teams have these. Are you guys buying that? Aren't we far enough in that it didn't matter we didn't have a preseason?
No, I don't buy that. Yeah. I mean, even when they have a preseason, it usually takes them a month to get going. So we're essentially 2 months in now. So regardless of that, it also just, Bucs keep adding pieces. Do they need Antonio Brown? No, I don't think so. Does he help? Maybe, but I mean, not that we really need to get into it. That's a really dicey guy to bring into a locker room.
You think so?
That's putting it mildly, where it's just like, well, think about it.
4 teams in 20 months. Need you say more?
Used car salesman.
This guy is poison. He just is.
And this must be pick on Dan Marino week because Mahomes passed him to 100 touchdown passes sooner than the record holder, who was Dan Marino in his career. So must be take a shot at Dano Day. Okay, any other highlights you want to fire away at here?
Well, I was just going to say the Pittsburgh-Dallas game.
Yes.
First of all, Pittsburgh 8-0, best start in their history. But for a guy who was bagging groceries last week, that Gilbert guy came in. And you know what? He did all right. I mean, it was crazy that you're just bringing this guy in. It's like, I know a guy. He's over here in the parking lot. Let's just go ahead and get him.
He's over there just shagging balls, out of the parking lot. Yeah, I don't know.
So that was interesting.
You got to give it to the Steelers. I don't think we saw that coming either. But look at them go.
I will say this is true because we probably all know like diehard Steelers fans, and it is one of those games on paper. You look at the Cowboys, like how bad they have been in the last few weeks, and you're just like, oh, Pittsburgh's going to blow them out. And if you know any Pittsburgh fans, like, no, they won't. Because as good as Tomlin is, he is a good coach. And I know this isn't completely on him. The thing under Tomlin is they play up to their competition. And it's very bizarre. Like, they could beat very good teams. Obviously, they beat the Ravens last week. They could beat very good teams. But they always play at the level of their competition. They're never going to – it doesn't feel like they blow people out. I mean, luckily they had that Cleveland game this year. But for the most part, they let these bizarro teams, like, hang around when they're clearly better than. It's just very odd and confusing.
Well, and I think last year with Big Ben walking around with that cast on, I think we wrote him off and thought he was done, and look at him now.
Yeah. Well, luckily the injury wasn't because he got that hit early on at the end of the first half where it looked like maybe he tore like a LCL or MCL, and it's like, well, that's gonna be bad because they very quickly brought out Mason Rudolph and showed it's another year, still have the same amount of faith in Mason Rudolph. It's like throw 2-yard pass, a 3-yard pass, settle for like a 54-yard field goal. So,